evening, but just very quickly from me, just an overview of what to expect from tonight. Of course, this evening we'll be giving everybody an overview of what to expect from the college application process, what the nuts and bolts, so to speak, of the actual technical pieces of completing your applications, narrowing down your decisions, filling out your college list will be, and how we'll get you from September of senior year to June of senior year, which, believe it or not, is not so far away. We'll also take a quick look at last year's trends and what they mean for Wheatley seniors this year. But before I get there, just a quick bit. We will talk about transcripts a little bit more as the evening goes on. But just know that I will be sharing your child's transcript, your official senior transcript with you. Should be by the end of this week, maybe by Friday. And we'll go over what we ask you to do in that process. But essentially, we're just going to ask you as a family to read that over, review it, make sure it looks in accordance with everything you would anticipate it to look like. If you have questions, contact your counselor. If not, complete the form that we'll send it out with, indicating that it looks all ready to go for you, and the counselors will share it with the colleges. So please do expect those by about this Friday, September 12th. And now, just to look at last year's trends, a few things we saw. Applications increased to many institutions, especially Ivy League and highly selective institutions. This is in keeping with the trends we've been seeing for the last 3 to 4 years or so. We did also overall, nationally, see a slight uptick at some institutions, some of those highly selective institutions. However, most still remain near the historic lows that we've been seeing since the 22-23 cycle. So what we've seen really since COVID, due to many factors, during those early years of COVID, we noticed a trend in which colleges tended to over-admit their incoming classes a little bit because they couldn't be sure who would genuinely be attending. And then we saw a bit of a correction in the years that followed where some of those admissions rates shrank. We did see a little bit of an uptick, probably to correct for that now this past cycle. However, that uptick did not bring us closer to those numbers we were seeing in 2018, 2019. We still remain a little bit closer to the numbers from 22, 23. And so what does that mean to us? Well, the influx of highly qualified candidates has also caused colleges to issue deferrals or rejections to more qualified applicants than ever before. As a result, it's become increasingly important for seniors to diversify their college lists and highlight their individual talents and accomplishments beyond high school transcripts and test scores. And so with that in mind, this is how we ask you all to approach the process. Now, for those of you who have been kind of coming to these guidance department events since early college planning night in your 9th and 10th grade years, or junior college planning night, this will be a very familiar message to you, so I will abridge it, but I don't believe it bears omitting. This process is very much about you finding the schools that are your fit. There are a number of schools that will fall into that category. Do not allow yourself to fall in love with any one particular institution, school. The work you're going to do with your counselors and with your families over the months ahead is going to be to review the colleges that have the program you want, the campus life that you want, and the schools that will put you in the best position to be successful after graduation. It's important to bear in mind that college is a means to an end, not an end in and of itself. It's a very personal process. And going back to those trends we talked about just a minute ago, I do want to make sure to call your attention to that as well. The increasing importance for the personalization of this process. The counselors and I sat on an information call with the admissions office at Duke College. It was either late last winter or early spring. And in particular, they were talking about the increased competitiveness of the applications and how overall, overwhelmingly, the majority of their applicant pool was academically admissible to Duke. And so many of the decisions that were being made were made based on other factors, such as the feeling as to whether or not the student would be a good fit for Duke's campus. The ways that you as students, if Duke is a college that you're passionate about, or if you have any particular college that you're passionate about, to have whether or not you are a good campus fit come through is to make sure that your essay, your recommendations, your activities resume come alive as something that is personal to you. I will bring it up and we'll talk about it probably a little bit later, but AI. AI is a great tool. It's something that I have seen individuals rely on in a number of areas of life. When it comes to writing your college essay, AI needs to be verboten. You cannot use AI. The reason for this is college reps may not have a reliable way to identify whether or not you have absolutely used artificial intelligence to write your essay. But what they can tell is this doesn't feel genuine to a person. That human touch is lacking in the writing of AI. As a result, make sure you are personalizing your process, and the best way to do that specific to the essay is make sure you're personalizing that essay. But make sure the real you comes out, connect with college representatives at different college fairs. I sent a mailer out last Friday with a listing of upcoming college fairs in our area for the next month or so. Make sure you're reaching out to the representatives. I shared the list of upcoming rep visits with the parents and students in my message last Friday. It's also posted on Naviance and on the bulletin board outside of guidance. Track that as the colleges you're interested in are coming in. Make sure you're building those connections with representatives. Market yourself. Your grades are strong and they're going to get you there. Your scores are strong and they're going to get you there. But that next piece is the personal piece, the you. Make sure that you're expressing that to the colleges as well. So I just have those last few words before we got started. I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Gluck just to look at, as I said, those nuts and bolts of the application.
All right, good evening. I'm going to talk about different components of the college application. First and foremost, many of you are familiar with the Common Application. Many students know it as Common App. That is going to be your main college application. So Common App is an application that has more than 1,000 colleges that accept it. There's supplemental applications to individual colleges on the Common Application, and sometimes it's multi-step essays. So it's really important for students to set up their Common App account. That's something that we can do with each of our students if they have not been on that site yet. It also links directly with Naviance. So when you set your college meeting with your counselor, that's one question we're going to ask. Are you linked directly to Naviance from your Common App? Have you matched it? Don't worry if you have not, we'll do it with you. You may have also heard of the coalition application. That is another type of application that can be used to apply. The Common Application, and I know it's just a coalition, but the Common Application only allows a student to apply to 20 schools. So some students, depending on the type of program they're applying to, 20 might be too many schools for some student, but certain types of programs may require specific criteria that a student may have a lengthier list. The coalition is another application you may use if the college is a member of that. 170 plus colleges accept the coalition. In rare instances, your university might be coalition only, coalition exclusive, then you would have to use it. From the counselor's perspective, we found students sharing that it's more time consuming to complete it as you're required to self-report high school grades. You might have to do that for the Common Application depending on the individual college, but the coalition, it's a little lengthier, and the essay lengths vary by institution. There's also some school-specific applications. So if you are applying to any of the CUNY, so that's the City University of New York schools, the CUNY does have its own application. We can certainly work with your students to make sure that they are accessible and have the access to the CUNY application. SUNY also has their own application. However, the SUNY schools are available on the Common Application. So we do recommend, if possible, to use the Common Application for that. And certain colleges, such as Rutgers, at points they have only used their website. So we just have to, take a look at which colleges your child is applying to and make sure that we use the appropriate application. So application terminology, this is where it can get a little confusing. And again, please make sure to reach out to us if you have any questions. We will guide you through it. Early decision. Early decision is a binding agreement with the college. So the student is stating that they're going to attend if they've been admitted. There is an early deadline. Usually that deadline is November 1st or 15th, and the decision is made on or about December 15th, whether the student has been accepted, deferred, or denied admission to the institution. You can only apply to one school early decision, and it's not a decision for every single student. That is something that you're going to have that conversation not only with your parents, but your counselor, so that we can advise you what might be the best fit and match for you as well. With early decision, you really have to make sure that is the school that you want to be at. I always recommend that if you are applying early decision, hopefully you took a visit to that college already, but that is something to keep in mind. Early action or priority deadlines is a non-binding application, so it also has an early deadline. There are some schools out there that have October 15th deadlines. There are colleges, most of them November 1 or 15 for that early action. You'll usually see decisions made anywhere from mid-December through the end of January. So you may not hear back until after the break, the holiday break. With that being said, take advantage of the early action schools. Why? You find out a little bit earlier, and then you have that time to go visit and really research if that is the right fit for you. In most cases, there's really no harm in that early action, using that type of application. Just make sure you speak with your counselor so we know that you plan to use it. Rolling admissions. You don't see it as common, but it's one of those first come, first serve. That doesn't mean you have to apply tonight. We want to be thoughtful. We want to make sure that your schedule is set. We want to make sure that everything is in line and that you're putting forth your best work. With that, applications are processed as they roll in and they decide as they get in. For example, we had Ohio Wesleyan today in our office. They are a rolling admission school. So as they receive the applications, they said starting this week, they're starting to review the applications and would render a decision within a week or two. It's very individualized per college if they are rolling. Regular decision. Those are colleges that decisions are made after the deadline has lapsed. Usually you'll see those deadlines a little bit later on in the year, sometimes February deadlines, sometimes end of January deadlines, and then you won't hear back until about April, early April, end of March sometimes. There's no harm in applying regular decision. Some colleges only have an early decision option and a regular decision option. If you're not going to commit to the school, again, no harm in applying regular decision. And then you need to be mindful of single choice early action or restrictive early action. A few of the more competitive colleges offer this non-binding admissions policy, but it does have some caveats where students are not necessarily allowed or permitted to apply to a private school early action or early decision during the process. So that's something that if we come across that, will help you navigate it. Submitting applications to the guidance office. So the students who are online and here, this is really important for you. As you know, our office is extremely busy during this time and we want to support all of your applications as thorough as possible. And it's essential to make meetings with your counselor so that we are on the same page and that we know your deadlines. Appointments can be made. Mr. O'Brien already shared a link that you could start your initial college meeting. We had a junior meeting, now we can have a senior meeting. And from there, we're going to continuously meet. It will take up to 15 school days for all college paperwork requested to be processed. So don't wait till the last minute. We have some processing forms which we'll get to, and with that, there's gives you a guideline of when we need to see you in the office based on your deadline. Naviance and common application, as I mentioned, must be matched. That's found under colleges I'm applying to. Again, when you come in for your meeting, we can help you match that. The application processing form and transcript verification form must be submitted with the student and parent signatures. The transcript verification form is what Mr. O'Brien just referenced. When he sends out your transcript, you need to sign off on the form. That's to verify that everything looks good on your transcript. That does not mean we are automatically sending any documents to colleges. That's what the application processing form is for. Seniors, please, we have sent out multiple emails. Make sure you are on Naviance with your completed activity sheet or resume. That is actually found under the portfolio section. It will be talked about a little bit later tonight. And make sure that your brag sheet as well is completed. That is important for us to write your letters. So again, it must be updated in Naviance and submitted at the time the first college paperwork request form is submitted to us. And again, I can't stress enough, we will support you through this whole process. So just make sure that if you have questions, you come prepared with that. We're happy to help you. Transcript verification form, one more time with that. You're going to review the transcript that Mr. O'Brien sends out either Friday or early next week. He's going to share that via Parent Square. Once you reviewed it, whether there is a mistake or whether it is perfect, please complete the digital transcript form via Google. From there, we will take a look and make sure that if there's any errors, we rectify that. Any student in SWS, there's a separate transcript, so you can talk with Todd and Al. He'll be able to provide you a copy of that transcript. That's going to be a little detailed based on the courses you're taking there, and we'll want his signature, and we'll add that to the back of your transcript so that the colleges have context regarding SWS. Student and parent signatures, again, are required for the transcript verification form. The application processing form. So this is a form for our use. I always like to say this is Willy Wonka's golden ticket, and I hope I'm not outdating my students here. It includes all the colleges and universities in which you're applying to. So this gives us, again, I mentioned deadlines. So for example, if you have an October 15th deadline, it will say that we'd like these forms in our hands by October, I think it's 1st or 2nd there, 2nd. With that being said, you just want to adhere to that. That gives us ample time to submit letters of recommendation and all your supporting documents. When you meet with us, it doesn't mean you have to have everything on your end completed, but we will guide you as to when is a good idea to submit. This needs to be updated if adding an institution in the middle of your process. So for example, if you come in next week and you hand a form in and this has 5 schools, and then you have 6 more schools that you would like to add, every single time you're adding an additional school, it is very important for you to, 1, make an appointment with your counselor, not just try to hand it to us in the hallway, and fill out this form, have it signed that your parents are aware you're applying, and then from there, we'll sit down and make sure everything is matched. There are some colleges you'll find through the process that are, again, not on common application. We have to manually match that in our system. That's why this form is incredibly important to us. I'm going to now pass it on to Ms. Schechter.
Good evening. I'm going to talk to you about the pieces of the application. That's really where you're probably at this point, is thinking about how all these different parts get to the college. So the parts of the application are your high school transcript, which you will verify. You will work on your essays and supplements. Recommendation letters will be uploaded onto Naviance. You should have seniors invited the teachers on Naviance who are going to be writing your letters. Okay, so that's important. The only way the teachers could upload their letters is if you've invited them through Naviance. You should have an activities resume, the portfolio in Naviance. Sometimes a student creates their own resume. That's fine if you email it to your counselor and your teachers. And then your SAT or ACT scores, if you're submitting them, that has to be done by you, the family. We do not send scores. Okay, so those are the parts of your application. The transcript is a 3-year cumulative weighted and unweighted GPA. It includes your Regents level courses if you took them in 8th grade. So on the transcript, it's weighted and unweighted. We get a lot of questions about that. On your application, you could certainly put your weighted GPA. It's the higher one. Your transcript hopefully shows academic growth of your entire high school career. So they're really looking at the whole picture. Okay, but I will tell you, seniors, that it's really important how you do, especially beginning of this year. Even though it's not part of your GPA, very often schools will ask for first quarter or mid-years because they want to know what you're doing right now before you step on their campus. So keep up those grades. Consistency in grades. They will see the senior year courses you've selected. Ideally, when we send your transcript out, it's the accurate portrait of what you're doing as seniors. That's why it's so important to give some thought now to whether the courses you're taking feel like the right fit for you. Come meet with your counselor if you're thinking of making a change so that we could talk about it and hopefully get that decision made before your transcript goes out. I just spoke about first quarter and mid-year senior grades are very often, especially in early decision, they ask for first quarter grades, and then often later on they might ask for mid-years. Your final GPA, which will be your 4-year GPA, will be sent to the colleges upon graduation. The college essay. As Mr. O'Brien mentioned, this cannot be something that you create through AI. We have heard from so many of the college reps that they are able to diagnose an essay and say this does not feel like the voice of a 17 or an 18-year-old. And I think right now they're really sensitive to that fact. So please be careful and thoughtful in what you write. The essay provides an opportunity for a student voice and some creativity. Sometimes students will try to be funny or try to go off in a really interesting way. Just make sure you have a counselor and an adult read it and help you to make sure, number one, you're answering the question if you are answering the question. On the Common App, one of them is topic of your choice, but you want to have a couple of eyes, maybe a counselor, a teacher, and a parent, but not too many eyes, because if you ask too many people to look at your essay, you're going to lose the voice of that high school senior. So you really want it to be your work. You want it to be engaging. You must have it proofread. It's really important that someone looks it over, another set of eyes to proofread it. Be careful about asking too much advice. You really want, if you have the right topic, and I say this all the time, it should flow pretty easily. Think about your audience. Your audience is a college representative. The person is probably closer to your age, seniors, and definitely from my age. They are proud of their schools. They have very often gone to their schools, and they want to make a good fit. They're not English professors. They're not research professors. They're typically in their 20s, have recently graduated. Maybe they're grad students there, and they just want to find the right fit for their school. That's who's reading your essay. Watch for the supplemental essays on the Common App. If you're applying to a special program or scholarship, you might have some extra writing to do. Chances are you will. The supplements are school specific. They want to know that you know who they are. That's really the goal with a lot of these supplements. Is this a right fit? Do you know the school you're applying to? So don't be too generic on supplements. If they're asking why you're applying to a college, give a specific answer for each school. Even if you're applying to each school as a business student, the business program on each school is going to look different, okay? You've got to take time to think about it. All I'll say about optional essays is nothing's optional in this process. If they offer you something to add to your application, you should take advantage of that. Letters of rec. So your school counselor, we write a letter for every one of our seniors. And that's when the brag sheet becomes really important. We're very blessed. We're a small school. We know each one of our seniors. That doesn't mean we know everything about maybe what you're proud of, that you do outside the classroom. The brag sheet, the only one that's going to read it is your counselor. And it's really there to guide us so you could share with us what you want to make sure we share with the colleges. The more time you spend on your brag sheet, the better letter we will be able to write. Also, when we call schools to advocate for you, we can look back at that brag sheet and say, oh, I want to remember to highlight this about this student. We take our letters really seriously. We write very personal essays. We want to make sure that we are enriching your application. So it's really important that we talk. You could come in once a week between now and applying, and you'd be surprised, even by talking, we might learn something that we want to add to our letter that you shared. You might not even realize that it's something that sparked something in us about you. We've asked you to ask 2 teachers to write letters for you. The teacher letters highlights who you are during a specific course. But the teachers also will ask for that resume activity list so they know what you've done outside the classroom, because they're trying to write a story about you that maybe transcends the classroom a little bit. So it's important that that teacher is someone that knows you. It doesn't have to be a teacher that you receive an A in the class. That teacher should know your work ethic, your honesty, that you've put in the effort, that you've made a connection with that teacher. Students are encouraged to sign all waiver forms, waiving access to recommendation letters. That's the FERPA on the Common App, if you've done it yet, students, that says that you waive your right. By waiving your right to read any letter, it makes that letter more credible. If you have recommendations cannot be uploaded without completed school section or Common App. Okay, so if you are getting ready to come meet with us, in order for us to send anything out, you need to have finished or started the school section on the Common App, the education part. By doing that section, and hopefully you all know what I'm talking about for education, then we can start to send out things for you. Please note that Wheatley staff submits letters for Common App and Coalition via Naviance. If you are on the Common App and there's a part which will say recommenders, you are not inviting your counselors on the Common App to submit your letters. Check in with the counselor regarding procedures for outside recommenders. So if you have a coach and that you want that coach to upload a letter and they are not part of the Wheatley staff, there is a way through the Common App to add a recommender that is not going to send it through Naviance. So no worries, you can still do that. It's just a little bit of a different process. Am I doing activities? Or are you? Yeah, I think you are. Questions at the end? Or questions at the end? Thank you.
Hi everyone, how are you? Lots of exciting stuff, right? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about activities. So Mrs. Schatz already touched on the portfolio and resume on your Naviance application. And then also in the Common application, there's a section for your activities. When you are in the Common application, you have 10 spots to use for activities. We encourage everyone to list those in order of how important they are to you. The first one, which should be the most important, and then you work your way down. If you have more than 10, some schools allow a separate resume to be submitted, or we find other places on the Common App to add some of that additional material. So what is it that is considered an extracurricular activity? It could be community service, inside school, outside of school, athletics, musical awards, becoming part of an outside chorus, awards recognitions that you receive here at Wheatley, summer experiences, work experiences, volunteer experiences, all of that goes into your extracurricular resume and portfolio. If you have questions, you're not sure what to add, what not to add, my go-to is add it all. We could always take it off if we don't think it's the right fit. Your resume should start once you begin ninth grade. So if you did something prior to ninth grade, that doesn't go on your high school portfolio resume. As schools are becoming more competitive and they're looking for that fit that we've all sort of touched on tonight, they want to see, as the admissions counselors do, they want to see if you're going to be that fit on campus. Are you going to get involved? Are you going to bring your leadership skills? Are you going to interact and sort of participate in campus activities? Okay. My favorite words, SAT and ACT. How many of you are so excited that you're testing? No? Okay. I tried. The SAT and ACT scores are sent to colleges by the students through the College Board website and through the ACT website. We do not send any of your scores from our office. It has to be directly from the testing companies themselves. While many schools are still test optional, it is very important to confirm if they've changed their policies. There are schools that are returning to the testing being required. So as you're looking at schools, as you're meeting with us, as you're having conversations with admissions counselors, make a note and say who requires testing, who does not require testing. So that this way we know where we can send your scores, or I'm sorry, where you send your scores and where you don't send your scores. And as I said, we can help you if you're trying to decide, do we send it if they're test optional, do we not send it, or yes, we have to send it. We do recommend that students do have some type of testing in their back pocket for a school that might require it. Okay. Scholarships and financial aid. Sign me up. Grants. So there are grants such as the TAP grant, the Pell grant, and that's federal aid that does not need to be paid back. These are provided by the government, and when you fill out the FAFSA form, they determine what you're eligible for. Student loans. Student loans can be private lenders or government-backed agencies. The government-backed student loans are awarded by completing the FAFSA forms, and they come as subsidized and unsubsidized loans. What is the difference? So for a subsidized student loan, the interest is accrued and paid for the borrower by the federal government while the student is enrolled in college. The unsubsidized student loans, interest accrues while students are enrolled. The student must either pay while they're enrolled, or it could be deferred until the time that a student graduates. But it must be paid at some point, and you must communicate with the lender that you have a plan to pay the interest. Okay, that's the update. So the 2026-2027 FAFSA form is expected to open on October 1st. In order to fill out the FAFSA forms, parents and students must create an FSA ID to complete the form. Student has one ID, the parent has their own ID. The IDs for the students and parents must be created 3 days prior to the planned date of the FAFSA completion. I would give it a little bit more time than that, just in case it's delayed. You do not want to wait until the last minute to fill out these forms. Students and parents must log in separately with their FAFSA IDs to complete the FAFSA forms. Scholarships and financial aid. So on the Wheatley website, we will share different financial and school-specific scholarships that are available at the national level, sometimes at the local level, and then school-specific. You can view them through the Naviance accounts. Then you have different websites like FastRep, scholarships.com, College Board that have scholarship search engines that you can search for scholarships. So whether you're looking for a scholarship for a left-handed middle child, believe it or not, there might be a scholarship for a student who is a middle child and left-handed. But there's lots of different options out there. It's important that you research them. If you're eligible, you might as well fill it out because you never know. The FAFSA form is the free application for student aid. It calculates a family's expected contribution to the school. The CSS profile is a separate form required by many private schools. It's like college scholarship service through College Board. There's over 600 colleges that do require this. Like I said, it is mostly the private schools versus the public schools.
So as we start to bring tonight to a close, just a few things to remember, and then we'll open it up for questions. Firstly, also, just to circle back to the financial aid piece just for 1 minute, that CSS profile. Do be aware that especially many of the more highly selective colleges will require that as part of the financial aid process as well. It is a far more in-depth form than even the FAFSA form is. So sometimes we have parents, especially if it's their first time through the college process with their child, they're taken a little bit aback by the thoroughness of the questions on that CSS profile. If a college does require it, it is something that for your financial aid application to be considered, that you will have to complete. So do just bear that in mind. Also, because it does come up here often. We get this question a lot. The FAFSA only allows you to submit it to 10 schools at a time. So if your application list is greater than 10, what we ask you to do is apply to the schools with the earliest deadlines first through the FAFSA. Once you get a message from the individual colleges that your FAFSA has been downloaded, you can go back into the FAFSA, remove that school, and then add the next school on your list. So just kind of a little point of protocol for that, because parents get surprised. The common application and the coalition application allow for so many applications, and then the FAFSA only lets you do 10. So you do have to do that little bit of switch out if you're applying to more than 10 schools. So do just bear that in mind. You want to give yourself as much time with the FAFSA as possible. And so just as we bring things to a close, things to keep in mind. First and foremost, read the emails from guidance and seek out your counselor for support. I say this so often, but the college application process is just that. It's a process, not an event. This is not just going to be when you connect with your counselor for your first college meeting, it's one and done. The more questions you ask your counselor, the more answers they can give you, and hopefully the easier they can make this process for you. So please, after that initial meeting, make sure you're following up with your counselor with any questions that you have. It's not lost on me that this night in particular really is one of the more informationally dense evenings that we do. You do get a lot of information. It's a lot of forms that are mentioned. And for you right now, especially if you haven't had a child go through this process, it's really just words, and it's not necessarily sinking in. All right, when do I fill out that form versus this form? Don't necessarily worry about that. The entire presentation tonight has been recorded. I'm going to share it out to you. You'll be able to scroll through it at your leisure to go back on these topics. The presentation slides themselves will also be shared out. They'll be available on the website for you to look back at as well. The key thing really after tonight, the first step I encourage you all to take is, if you haven't already through the Parent Square message I sent out on Friday, go back in, schedule the senior planning meeting with your counselor, with your child's counselor. That's going to be where really the individualized process will begin as it pertains to college or any other plans that you might have for life after Wheatley. This night in particular focuses on the college pathway, because that really is the piece of the post-secondary planning process that has the most steps and the most forms. But for those of you with students interested in pursuing the world of work, the military, trade schools, those individualized meetings support them as well. So whether we have students who are applying to college or any other plan after high school, that next step is the meeting with the counselor. If you cannot find the Parent Square, which parents tell me frequently, go onto the Guidance Department website on the Wheatley homepage. Each individual counselor is linked there as well. You can go to the Calendly, find their availability, schedule a meeting time that works for you. Parents are welcome virtually or in person, so we can really work around as many work schedules as possible. I mentioned it again at the beginning of the night, but I did want to share it one more time. We do have our college rep visits in full swing. I did share out the live schedule to families of reps that are coming in. As reps schedule additional meetings with us, my secretary, Ms. Horton, will update that list so you'll be able to see it live. Seniors, you can also see that in Naviance. Make sure you're checking it, you're signing up for the visits. We've had well-attended college visits so far, but especially as you're refining that list, those schools that you really want to make sure you make a connection to the rep for, if they're going to be here, just make sure you give yourself the opportunity to see them. And again, check back to that Parent Square I sent out. I will send that information again when I send out the transcripts, but just make sure that you're going to those college fairs. You're giving yourself opportunities to engage with the reps. Not all schools track engagement, but more do than not. So just make sure you're connecting with those representatives. And again, just make sure we're watching deadlines. When I say deadlines in the college process, for most seniors, they think that means the application deadlines, because that is what we talk about a lot here tonight. October 15th, November 1st, November 15th. There will be deadlines after you get in. And I really, all too often, sometimes our Wheatley guys kind of forget about that. But deadlines do exist, and we have to make sure we follow them. So after you get into these colleges, you will get emails from them. You have to check them. Sometimes they'll send it to your personal email. Sometimes they'll set up a university email for you that you're not really in the mindset to be checking yet because you're not a student there, but they're sending you updates there. Financial aid deadlines, housing deadlines are a big one. If you plan to live on campus and you need to apply for housing, They will send you a completely separate application process for the housing. You have to make sure you fill it out. If you miss that housing deadline, they're far less flexible and forgiving than we tend to be, and you will find yourself in an, I almost said in a van down by the river, in an apartment, in an apartment off campus if your family is so gracious. So please make sure that you're doing that. And again, visit those chosen colleges before you deposit. The deposit deadline is May 1st, but the first day you set foot on campus should not be the day that you're unpacking in your dorm. Make sure once you get accepted to a school, or if possible, before you even apply, you've seen the campus. The websites pay photographers a lot of money to take a lot of pretty pictures of these campuses, but what they will not always show you is some of the less pleasant pieces of the campus. So make sure if it's a place you're planning to spend the next four years of your life, that you're comfortable doing so. Please make sure you visit these schools. And again, just a few dates to remember. Beginning tomorrow, schedule your child's senior meeting if you haven't done so already to really begin the process in earnest. September 19th will be the deadline for the transcript verification form. October 17th will be an in-school SAT exam for seniors. I did share out the sign-up sheet for that. Also, I noticed a little hitch with that this morning. We're using a little bit of a different system. The system will treat paying through Parent Square and signing up for the exam through Parent Square as two different processes. So if you did click the payment button, just make sure you also input your child's information into the form as well. I'll send something out letting parents know that. I did catch one person today who paid but didn't actually put their child into register. Fortunately, we caught it, but I just want to make sure that we don't see anyone else in that boat as well. And again, some of these earlier deadlines, that October 1st FAFSA, do make sure you complete that as early as you can. Sometimes decisions on whether or not your child wants to go to these schools will be held up by what aid they're getting. The later the school gets your FAFSA, the longer it will take them to render those aid decisions. And sometimes it can get a little close to that deposit deadline. So please, especially if you plan to make your decision contingent upon what financial aid you receive for a school, make sure you apply earlier rather than later. Thank you all for coming, and I'm happy to open it up to questions if anybody has any. We have a few. Yes, Ms. Mizrahi.
Question about the FAFSA.
Sure.
I know that it changed 2 years ago, and it was a whole big mess.
Mhm.
So if you're from a divorced household, is it one parent that has to fill it out versus two?
My recollection there is it's the home in which your head hits the pillow more often than not. So the parent providing the predominant financial support for the child is my recollection.
Okay, because that could be different than where you live.
So if the question is to what I suppose assigned residency compared to actual residency, that one I would want to get more clarification for you from a financial aid professional. So what I'll do is I'll reach out to one of my contacts in the financial aid world and I'll get that specific information. You know, they have kind of the case-by-case basis. Sort of the traditional wisdom on that is where they are, but I do want to make sure if there's a distinction between what, and it happens sometimes, custody agreement says one thing, but then in practice, a child really spends more time in one place or the other. I'll get confirmation for that. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Well, what is that when they meet with the reps at the school? What are those meetings like?
Sure. So they're fairly informal. You know, the representatives, we do open it up to virtual meetings as well to allow us to kind of draw up folks from across the country. But when they come here to Wheatley or it's online, it's really a quick presentation and overview of what to expect about life on campus, what the kind of points of pride for the university are, and then opportunities for students to ask specific questions about programs, campus life, to pick the representative's brain. I will say we tend to see a lot of positive outcomes for our students from these visits. Just a few years ago, we had the rep from Dartmouth come in, and he was very impressed by a lot of the questions he was getting in that visit. So as students tend to make a really good impression when they're there. So I always encourage students, if you have the opportunity, you're interested in the school, make sure you go and engage with the representatives. It's really opportunities for open dialogue. So it's a good opportunity. Ms. Daskalakis?
About FAFSA, if
Sure.
we created a parent ID with another child, is that the same ID we use?
It should be the same FSA ID on the parent end, and then you'll just
Okay.
associate it to the next child's account. Yes, sir. So the letters of recommendation, one will come from the counselor no matter what. The counselor will complete the letter of recommendation. Typically, it's 2 teachers. It does not have to be 2 teachers. It can be a coach, a club advisor, someone who works with your child in an outside extracurricular capacity. We'll see Eagle Scout troop leaders quite often asked, but we do recommend at least 1 academic teacher be included as well. That 3rd recommender can sometimes be from outside the school, as long as we feel they can make a really strong case about another important aspect of the child's application. So it can be more than 3, but schools will have limits in certain cases on the amount of letters they'll accept. We've seen an increasing number in the past that really are just telling us we really just want the letter from the counselor. Many others will say we'll take a counselor and a teacher, and then others will say as many as you want. Some will say 4. The standard, however, tends to be counselor and then 2 is what we see more often than not. But certainly students can gather those letters more than the 3, and then they can kind of pick and choose. Yes.
If you use a personal rather than the school email for your Common App, is there any difficulty linking that to Nadia?
No.
Using your school app?
No, not at all. In fact, we do sometimes recommend using the non-school email because after graduation, if students decide either to transfer or to apply to Common App, in other words, they still have access to that Common App.
Yeah, I know. Well, originally there was kind of some problems linking it to Nadia years ago.
Yeah, that's been resolved
So
since.
we can use the personal email.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. That was back when, if I recall correctly, Naviance was not linked to school email addresses. Students were able to create, and this was a Naviance-wide issue, not an East Williston issue, but students were allowed to create a username. Sometimes that would create that disconnect. Naviance has since switched to school-managed emails being the login, and that resolved that issue.
Okay.
Yeah, you're allowed to have your personal email kind of connect through the email slot now. Yeah, that'll be fine. Other questions? Yes.
On Naviance, you have to invite the 3 teachers
Mhm.
to the letter of recommendation, but you don't have to invite the counselor.
Correct.
Okay. And then I have one other question. The meetings with the college reps who come here, when the kids register for that, it just has like the start time that the reps come in, like, do they have an assigned time or?
It would be by time slot. So it would, if Penn State is coming at 9:08, which is the start of second period, it should be aligned to that. They should get that information.
Does that come from you? Because like the registration just says register for.
I had thought it came through Naviance. We do, however, have it posted on the actual visit page. I have seen when the student actually goes to register under the visits menu where they can see the visit to register, it is listed there. So if for some reason there's a disconnect with the automated email doesn't have the visit time, they can see it when they click on visits or on the bulletin board outside guidance, or if they check the document I shared out. So it should come through those emails, but if it doesn't, they can just go back to the visits tab and they will be able to see it there.
Sarton's also pretty good at sending those seniors reminders each morning about which colleges are coming and what time.
Because I just know when I looked at Willows and I looked at it briefly, it just said registered.
Yeah,
But it
if you're
didn't, like,
registered.
right, I mean, I only looked at that first. It didn't say a time, so I don't know. I mean, I didn't look any further, but it's there somewhere. Okay.
And just a question that came in through the chat that before I get back to other ones, it asked where the forms that are mentioned can be accessed. They'll be posted on the guidance department webpage. They're also on the circular table right in the guidance lobby. So when students walk into guidance, there's a table to the left with all the forms we're referencing here. They can just take them and head out in their travels. Yes.
Is the list of college reps that are coming to the school final, or is it depends on getting?
It's still open and growing. It's still open and growing.
Do we give recommendations or requests or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. If you have a particular school you're interested in, if you send an email, we do open it up to the colleges, and we certainly do reach out. If as we review the list, we see a school that we know our students are interested in, we have been proactive with them in the past. So, if there is one, we do encourage seniors to reach out to us and let us know. Yes, this is right.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gluck, if you said it already, it's just a lot of information, I'm a little rusty. Early action, can you apply to multiple schools for early action?
Yes, for early action you can. Early decision is the singular option.
The do they still need to sign for early decision?
Wait, for early decision? Yes, right? Yes.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
parent, you would type the parent onto the common application or the application that we're using. So the parent will receive an email to sign, and then the student signs it, and the counselor signs it.
Early action, you would not.
Or, yeah, early action is no. The best thing if you're waiting for financial aid is not to do early decision, because then if it's binding.
No, so one of the outs for early decision is because it's very rare that you'll receive a financial aid decision before an early decision outcome. So one of the ways in which early decision is no longer binding is if after you receive the financial aid package, it puts you in a position where you can't attend the school. You are able to be released from the early decision agreement under those
And
circumstances.
it's one last question based on early action.
Sure.
Do you have to respond to the school before May 1st if you've been
No.
accepted early action?
But when you're doing an early decision, are you still able to apply to other schools for early action?
You can apply through early action, regular decision, but if you receive the admission through early decision, you have to rescind all those other applications. You can't accept those offers, but you certainly can apply to more than one. Other questions?
Once you go through that list that you have and you sign up for stuff, does that system automate an email reminder, or is it on you to kind of remember to sign up?
That's for the college visits.
Yeah.
I know you get the initial one. I'm not sure if say you signed up a week in advance and then the day of the visit. I would have to check. I'm not sure. Miss Horton sends them out daily, not automated and not necessarily direct to a student. So if John Smith signs up for St. John's on October 17th today, Miss Horton will send out on October 17th to the seniors, St. John's is coming in. Hopefully that would jog John Smith's memory, but yes.
So like, hop on that, Christian would say, sign up for pay one and see if it's on my life, so what's everything on my day. So I don't know.
Okay. And it's also on the bulletin board, right opposite the main office. There's a calendar of all the different schools that are visited. I'm not.
Now, if they're doing a class period, obviously, it's in school doctors, but what about like, what's the policy on work class on, same period, what's that?
Would you say work like an outside school?
Schoolwork.
Oh, if they were,
They're all third period, let's say, you wanna go to private, you missed a lot of work. How does that?
I mean,
Curious what it.
the teachers certainly allow for the makeups. Typically, they're pretty well spread out where a student isn't really missing the same class with too great a frequency, but the teachers cooperate with students. The teachers cooperate with students.
Also, we could certainly send